चैतन्यमयी सत्यमयी परमे आनन्दमयी चैतन्यमयी सत्यमयी परमे आनन्दमयी चैतन्यमयी सत्यमयी परमे सत्यमयी परमे सत्यमयी परमे सत्यं ज्ञानं सत्यं ज्ञानं ज्योतिररविन्द सत्यं ज्ञानं सत्यं ज्ञानं ज्योतिररविन्द सत्यं ज्ञानं सत्यं ज्ञानं ज्योतिररविन्द ज्योतिररविन्द So we almost every class talked about in one way or the other what Sri Aurobindo talks about Kalyan Shraddha, that is faith in the goodness of life, the fact that everything is working for your good and so on. But what makes us time and again doubt this? What is it that creates doubt in our mind about this? Come on, what makes you doubt this?
Some circumstances.
What circumstances?
Something in the family or something with your parents.
So in a generic way, what would it be, Kahini? When things don't go as you want them to go, right? When things go contrary to your expectations, when things hurt in a way your sense of I, right? It's because the only thing in you that can ever hurt is your ego. The rest of you can't hurt. But when things hurt your sense of I and give you pain, that's when you doubt this. I mean, you know it intellectually, but at a very experiential level, you can't be believing in Kalyan Shraddha and yet be unhappy, right? It's not possible. So in that moment, you don't have faith, or you're not connected to it, or you don't really believe it in a real way that life is working for your good and all that. Are we on the same page? Yeah? So we doubt the fact that things are working for me when I have pain in my life, because the conditioning from not only this life but past lives is that pain is bad, right? that when you're in pain, it's not pleasant and we go into a flight or fight mode, right? We want to resist the pain or we want to somehow get it out of our system. We don't like to feel it. We get impatient with pain. We don't want to be with pain. So that is, in a sense, the greater pain. The need to avoid pain, the need to run away from it, the need to feel it's bad, that is the greater pain. So we'll see M. Scott Peck, a leading psychologist, he actually says that all neurotic behavior is a bid to avoid legitimate suffering. Suffering is legitimate because it's required the way we are. Without pain, sometimes we'd never grow, right? If we sort of stay stuck in a certain way of being, sometimes life needs to send us pain to discourage that way of being. But the moment pain comes, our inner dialogue is either I'm bad or life's bad, one of the two. You may not articulate it, but in your head space, it's a feeling of I'm bad or people are bad. So the response is guilt or resentment, resentment towards other or guilt towards myself. But that whole interaction we have with pain is in ignorance. There's a much higher way of interacting with pain, and that's the title of the talk today, Partnering Pain. Who do we partner? Who do we partner? Somebody you want to be with, somebody who's there to help you, makes you feel good, somebody who's there as a help. Your mother may not always make you feel good, but she's there as a help. She's your partner in life. So pain comes to you to partner you, but when you don't see that, you fight the pain, you resist it. But the correct interaction, you don't invite it, you don't indulge it. But if it comes, instead of resisting it and fighting it, the higher way out is to partner pain. Okay? So, open your PDF. So, these are words by a famous space scientist, Wernher von Braun. He says in his typical scientific language that just the way there's law of gravity, there's law of thermodynamics, there are laws of magnetism, there are certain occult laws of life. And if you know those laws and you follow them, you are happy. Those who don't know those laws and violate the laws, they will be unhappy. Yeah? He's a scientist, so even philosophy he makes into, and it's good. If science and philosophy blend, that's the best. I mean, Sri Aurobindo was one of the greatest spiritual scientists. If you read his works, it's very, this is the observation, this is the conclusion, you can literally see that experimentation in his language. So these are words of Wernher von Braun. The plant grows not by chance but by law. To those who don't know the law, they'll just say, "Arey, it was a seed, 2 weeks later it's a plant, how did it happen?" We feel it's a chance. But a scientist will know the laws by which the seed became a plant. There's no such thing as luck where there's law, just effects of unknown causes. The more you look, the more you will see the cause and effect. Your life is governed by law. When you become more aware and consciously utilize the laws, you are in effect taking control of your life. You begin to feel less like things happen to you and more like things happen for you. So when you really recognize the laws of life that are governing you, you feel less and less like you don't feel the plant, the seed just became a plant. You know, there was a process, there was a law governing it. The more and more you become conscious, you don't feel things happen to you, you feel things happen for you. So even if pain comes, somewhere there'll be an inner vision that will recognize the pain is happening for me. It's not randomly happening to me, it's happening for me. So Karen Miller says, what you think is an affliction is actually wisdom calling you home. What you think is an affliction, is an illness, whether it's mental, physical, emotional, it's actually wisdom calling you home. Now, words of M. Scott Peck. Problems are the cutting edge that Payal, you can come here. Problems are the cutting edge that distinguishes between success and failure. Problems call forth our courage and our wisdom. Indeed, they create our courage and our wisdom. So beautiful. Problems not only call forth our courage and wisdom, they create our courage and wisdom. Would you agree? How many of us have had an experience of this, that problems have created courage and wisdom in us? It is only because of problems that we grow mentally and spiritually. When we desire to encourage the growth of the human spirit, we challenge and encourage the human capacity to solve problems. Just as in school, we deliberately set problems for our children to solve. It is through the pain of confronting and resolving problems that we learn. As Benjamin Franklin said, those things that hurt instruct. Those very things that hurt you instruct you, they teach you. It is for this reason that wise people learn not to dread, but actually to welcome problems, and actually to welcome the pain of problems. Most of us are not so wise, right? We don't welcome the pain of problems. Fearing the pain involved, almost all of us to a lesser or to a greater or lesser degree attempt to avoid problems. We procrastinate hoping that they will go away, right? We don't want to deal with it, so we'll keep doing other things instead of dealing with the problem. That is flight. I said 2 ways we deal with pain is fight or flight. Flight is procrastination. I'm not going to address it. I'm like an ostrich. I'll put my head in the ground when there are gunshots, thinking that they won't get me. We ignore them, forget them, pretend they do not exist. We even take drugs to assist us in ignoring them, so that by deadening ourselves to the pain, we can forget the problems that cause the pain. We attempt to skirt around the problems rather than meet them head on. We attempt to get out of them rather than suffer through them. This tendency to avoid problems and the emotional suffering inherent in them is the primary basis of all human mental illness. What a statement made by a psychologist. The tendency to avoid problems and the emotional suffering inherent, inbuilt in them, is the primary basis of all mental illness. How do we explain this? Why would, say, anxiety, none of us have schizophrenia, bipolar, etc. Say all of us have experienced anxiety, which also classifies as a low-grade mental imbalance. Why would all anxiety have its roots in our inability to confront problems and work with them?
You're anxious because of a future outcome. Many a time you won't be anxious of what has happened to you. Anxiety is always experienced when you're about to experience something, like you're going to give a talk. You're anxious that how will the talk go. So it's like you're constantly trying to avoid the situation at one level, and it's like this. Even though we create a situation, you're always trying to avoid it and you're anxious about it.
Yes. So one way is something that makes me anxious. I don't want to do it. Like a lot of kids, they are so anxious about studying that they don't get down to studying. They keep procrastinating. No, that's a very common thing I face nowadays. They are so anxious, and the thought of studying scares them so much that they'll keep procrastinating and not study. The anxiety makes them dysfunctional. Similarly, if I have a conflict with a person, I'm so scared of hearing those things from the person that I'll avoid actual communication which will solve it. I'm running away from the communication because I'm dreading what the communication will bring. But the only way to resolve conflict is communication. No, I'm dreading the pain of the communication, so I'm not going into it. But that's what's creating more anxiety and more stress. Anything, because we are not willing to confront it, we just make it worse and worse and worse.
But why would the communication cause pain in the first place?
No, I'm very scared of, suppose I'm having conflict with you, I'm very scared what will Purvi tell me. Suppose it's a husband and wife, the wife doesn't want to hear the husband say it's over, so she'll perhaps not have a conversation. I'm giving examples.
Some people who can't communicate. So when they, there's no point in communicating.
Those people are a different category, but only the wearer knows where the shoe pinches. But I feel every person can be reached if somewhere we tap into the right space within us and communicate from that space. But even if we are very connected to that space, there are some people in whose presence we just can't connect to that space. So we bring out the worst in them, they bring out the worst in us. But if mother said, no, I keep saying this, if you contact the other person from the highest in you, the highest in the person is obliged to respond. But if I'm only reaching out to the person from the lowest in me, then I'll bring out the lowest in the person. So, we attempt to skirt around problems rather than meet them head on. We attempt to get out of them rather than suffer through them. The tendency to avoid problems and the inherent suffering and the emotional suffering inherent in them is the primary basis of. Another very good example of this is, I know so many people when their parents are aging, they can't bear to see their suffering in a sense. Maybe it scares them so they purposely spend minimum time with their parents because they don't want to face the suffering. And then when the parents are no more, they feel so guilty that they are suffering far more than what they would have if they'd just been present to the suffering. Many ways we don't go to areas which will make us suffer, and sometimes that makes us suffer even more.
That's why you have these coping mechanisms. They say that you have coping mechanisms. Avoidance is one of them.
Yes, but it's actually not a coping mechanism at all. If you just went into it, faced it, invited the right consciousness into it, dealt with it, it would be done. But this way it's just prolonging and adding to misery.
But sometimes time becomes the healer if you just let that thing go at that point. After giving it to mother, of course.
Yeah, each situation is different. I'm not making sweep, but I'm saying in general, then each situation is unique.
Another cause for anxiety is when desires are not fulfilled.
Yeah. So?
What you want, you don't get.
But that's also, desire is the residue. Partho had told us this, that desire is the residue of an incomplete experience. because your anxiety holds you back from fully experiencing the moment. It's like we are defensive against life and we don't experience the moment fully. Because we don't experience fully, there's a desire for more. If we experienced it fully, there'd be no desire for more. That's how sages live. The Zen master, they enjoyed everything fully. They weren't renunciates. But there was no desire for more after it was gone. But because we are not present fully and we don't complete the experience, there's a constant desire for more. Some of us will go to quite extraordinary lengths to avoid our problems and the suffering they cause, proceeding far afield from all that is clearly good and sensible in order to try to find an easy way out, building the most elaborate fantasies in which to live, sometimes to the total exclusion of reality. In the succinctly elegant words of Carl Jung, neurosis is always a substitute for legitimate suffering. Imagine Carl Jung, the father of Western psychology, saying neurotic behavior is like anxiety is a form of neurosis, paranoia, that's neurotic. So neurosis is always a substitute for legitimate suffering. If you recognize that the suffering was legitimate, it's necessary, and you went through it, you wouldn't be neurotic. You wouldn't be anxious, or you'd be less anxious. But the substitute itself ultimately becomes more painful than the legitimate suffering it was designed to avoid. The neurosis itself becomes the biggest problem. True to form, many will then attempt to avoid this pain and this problem in turn, building layer upon layer of neurosis. Fortunately, however, some possess the courage to face their neurosis and begin, usually with the help of psychotherapy. He's talking psychotherapy, we'll say yoga, to learn how to experience legitimate suffering. In any case, when we avoid the legitimate suffering that results from dealing with problems, we also avoid the growth that problems demand from us. It is for this reason that in chronic mental illness, we stop growing, we become stuck. And without healing, the human spirit begins to shrivel. Therefore, let us inculcate in ourselves and in our children the means of achieving mental and spiritual health. By this I mean, let us teach ourselves and our children the necessity for suffering, the value thereof, the need to face problems directly and to experience the pain involved. This is a beautiful learning. What does this mean? The necessity for suffering and the value thereof, and the need to face problems directly. When do we not face problems directly? What does this line mean, to not face problems directly?
Avoidance, you avoid the situation. Different ways. Whether you
Pushing it under the carpet or lying to yourselves, sugarcoating it. You know, we have different ways of avoiding looking at what the problem is. If thinking a thought hurts us very much, many of us will create many lies in our mind to erase that thought. But something deep down will always know we are lying to ourselves, right? So we are not confronting the problem. We are just trying to think in clever ways to find a way out of the pain. But if we really understand that pain is necessary, I mean, some point in evolution it may not be necessary, but right now the way we are, pain is necessary. It's not bad. A typical thing is I'm bad, so I'm going through pain. That's again conditioning. That's unfortunately a huge offshoot of the law of karma in India. You know, we feel I'm bad, but it's not like that. Pain doesn't come to you because you're bad or you're good. That's a very illogical way of looking at life. Pain comes to you at necessary moments of your life when you're poised to make a big growth. Very often, whenever pain comes to you, instead of going into the shrinking of I'm bad or life's bad, it's good to ask, what do I have, I'm hurting from this thought, and at a very thought level, it doesn't even have to be very big. A thought comes to you and brings you pain, sit with it. Why am I hurting from this thought? And really look at it in the eye. You'll find layers and layers of past conditioning behind every moment of thought. The first thing will be, I'm hurting because Kaddu spoke to me like that. She shouldn't speak to me like that. She always does this, blah, blah, blah. But if you sit with it and ask yourself, okay, Kaddu said this, but why is it hurting me so much? And you will see that, yeah, I'm hurting so much because in the past my mother had said something similar. So it's a raw nerve. Why did I, every wound, as Rumi says, the wound is where the light enters. It's so very true if you allow light to enter there. If you don't just accept the suffering at face value and you really look at it and go deeper and deeper and deeper within it, till at the bottom of the suffering there's only light. Yeah?
One thing to always remember is suffering is neither a virtue nor caused by your sin. It's actually an outcome of a learning process.
Yes, very well put. It's neither a virtue. Some of us feel, if I've done something bad, I'm so good, I'm feeling guilty, I'm suffering. But it's not a virtue.
Nor is it that people punish themselves and thinking that, oh, I have sinned,
Yes.
that's why I'm suffering.
Yes.
I did this, that's why that is
Yes.
happening to me. That law of karma is really, for most people, it's a law of suffering. Actually.
Yes.
I suffer because I did this to someone in the
It's
past.
not like that. See, law of karma is actually God's way of loving us. Think about it. If He didn't love us, He would just leave us to our ignorance. And I'm a teacher. If you fail a test, I'll give you one retest and mark you a failure in my grade book. But God can't do that. He'll send you the same stimulus again and again and again, saying, now pass, now pass. Pass meaning don't get triggered by it. Not like a test or anything, but just to free your consciousness of that pocket of ignorance that's inside you. So law of karma isn't about reward and punishment. It's just a modality of life and nature to help you to grow. So
What exactly is pain? Is it an emotion or is it?
pain can be mental, emotional or physical.
But the perception of pain varies. I've always, this is a thought process. Each person is processing pain differently. So, sometimes for some people something little could be more painful than for other people.
Of course.
So it's very, so loosely many of us can never really pinpoint or understand each other's pain because each other's experience of pain is so
Right.
different.
Our whole conditioning is different. So Patanjali in his Yoga Sutra says it very beautifully. He says the same object is seen differently by different subjects because he says each subject is metaphorically a river. If Kahini is a river that's flown over red soil, she has red color. If the river had eyes, Kahini would see the whole world red. If Rama is a river that has flown past yellow soil, she'll see the same world yellow. The world is what it is, but Kahini is seeing something else because of what she's gone through in her past, and Rama is seeing something else because of what she's gone through in the past. So that's M. Scott Peck. Now Karen Miller. As a girl of 4 or 5 staying overnight at the old place, I slept with my grandfather. He could snore like a bear, but I never heard him snore or at least I was never troubled by it. What I heard at night through the screen door atop the dark chill that carried the flavor of freshness were the crickets. I just heard the crickets. I didn't make any meaning of it then. 4-year-olds don't yet assign meaning to things, and I don't make any meaning of it now. I simply heard the crickets. I knew they were crickets, and I knew where I was and how I was and what time it was and what it was time to do. I knew everything that you know when you hear a cricket, which is actually quite a bit. So much that you can't really explain it all. And the good thing is you don't have to. I'm reciting all this because lately when I toss in bed, I can remember what I knew for sure when I was a little girl. Now my head is crowded with far more than it needs to be. For instance, needs to be of fear, for instance, of being old, and worry and doubts about my work, especially this work and my daughter, and whether she will be okay and not too disappointed or hurt, and then the prescription that needs refilling, and the bills that need to be paid, and I forgot. What did I forget? Oh, that's right. I forgot to call, to fix, to sign, to return, to finish, to start. And for all I know, there are crickets outside my own window right now. But most of the time, I'm making far too much noise between my ears to hear them. That's what can come between a sound and a song. Between the lost and found, between the solid earth and the endless sky, that's all there is to let go of, what we keep putting in between. So if Rama is that river who's gone through yellow, that yellow is coming between the reality and her vision, right? Take that yellow as a metaphor for negativity, for reading intentions into people's actions, which may be quite neutral. But if I've lived a lot with a parent who seemed to give me a compliment but was actually insulting me, you know, some people have a way of doing that, and I have somebody in mind I just spoke to today. Then anyone who's honestly also complimenting you, the person will keep reading an insult into it and think, oh, she said this because I'm like that. I mean, you know, so that's what Karen Miller's saying, that that's what can come between a sound and a song, between the lost and the found, and between the solid earth and the endless sky. That's all there is to let go of, what we keep putting in between. You weren't born with missing parts, absent a set of instructions. You have an intuitive guidance system and it's flawless. You don't need directions, even though it can be useful to consult them, until you no longer confuse the road map for the road. So she's saying you have an inner wisdom inside you which is constantly guiding you. You don't have to keep gathering information from outside. That's useful up to a point, but then learn to gather information from inside. You have to let go of everything we think we know, all the concepts and intellectualizations, because human knowledge is limited to the brain. But human wisdom isn't. Human knowledge is limited to the brain, human wisdom isn't. So in Peaceful Warrior, there was a beautiful line, the difference between knowledge and wisdom. Knowledge is, for example, knowing how to use an instrument, and wisdom is being able to actually use it. You can know it here, but wisdom comes when you can bring it into your life, and that comes from inside. You are much, much more than whatever it is you call yourself. Turn your attention away from yourself and do something good instead. You know how to do good. Do it right where you are. So, when you're depressed, you're paying too much attention to yourself. No, mother says that depressed people are necessarily very egoistic people because they keep thinking about themselves. My life, he did this, how will I cope, whatever. So that's what Karen Miller is saying. Turn your attention away from yourself and do something good instead. You know how to do good. Do it right where you are. Now, she says the simple drawings illustrate the sequence of steps we timid herders must take to tame a wild mind, the ox. So in Zen, there's a thought that the ox which is wild is the human mind. And we are the herder of the ox trying to tame that ox. So there are stages of growth. One, when the ox is going in one direction and the herder is being thrown off. You're getting overwhelmed. You're not able to tame the ox. Then the herder climbs back and is little by little trying to tame the ox. And the last in the series, in her words, so of course in the Zen pictures it won't be Krishna, but we couldn't find the picture, so we've used this. The ox herder has chased, found, reined in and tamed the wayward bull. Now he hoists himself atop the domesticated beast and lets it carry him home. If you get it, this is exceptionally beautiful, but let's read the whole thing. The two move as one. There is no conflict or hurry. The rider isn't leading the way. He isn't even holding the reins. He's holding a flute. Sitting backwards on the slow-moving ox, he gazes up at the drifting clouds and plays a children's song, unconcerned where the road will go. And thus he completes his journey. When your faith is secure, you will never be lost. Then who needs to learn the way home? So what she's really saying is that when Ramakrishna used to say that the completely purified mind is Atma, okay? The completely purified mind. So this symbol of the ox tamer becoming a boy sitting on the ox playing a flute and letting the ox carry it is representing a oneness between the mind and the soul. The tamer is the soul, the ox is the mind, and the ox has become so pure that it's become one with the soul. The completely purified mind is the soul. And when you're in that state, you're never worried about your well-being. You just play the flute, whatever your song is, and the ox carries you because you're one with the ox.
It also almost looks like the flute is making the ox becoming part of it. Like the music is so beautiful of Krishna's flute. It's like if you're so connected to that God
That's also beautiful, yeah.
If you're connected to that God consciousness.
It's like the ox is carrying the herder and the flute is carrying the ox. Nice. So I'm reading this again. The ox herder has chased, found, reined in and tamed the wayward bull. Now he hoists himself atop the domesticated beast and lets it carry him home. The two move as one. There is no conflict or hurry. The rider isn't leading the way. He isn't even holding the reins. He's holding a flute. So beautiful. He's let go of control. He's not holding the reins. Sitting backwards on the slow-moving ox, he gazes up at the drifting clouds and plays a children's song, unconcerned with where the road will go, and thus he completes his journey. When your faith is secure, you will never be lost. Then who needs to learn the way home?
Beautiful thing is unconcerned with where the road will go is the answer to anxiety.
Yeah.
It's because we are concerned about where the road is headed.
We
are
want to
anxious.
control, but if
Yeah.
we let go of
You're
control,
unconcerned with the road, there's no anxiety. If
There's
I'm
no
not
anxiety.
concerned about my life and I surrender, then why would I
I'm not concerned, but I'm assured my life is in good hands.
Because it's His will.
It's His will, and His will only take me to a good place. So now we come to Savitri. Very famous lines, but they need to be visited again and again because we keep forgetting. Pain is the hand of nature sculpturing men to greatness. Yeah, we've discussed that. We'd never grow great if pain didn't come. An inspired labor chisels with heavenly cruelty an unwilling mold. See, we've never heard of heavenly cruelty, no? We've heard of demonic cruelty. But look at how Sri Aurobindo said heavenly cruelty in the same, because it's cruel to our seeing. But because life never gives us more pain than what's good for our growth, it's heavenly, it's by a design, it's by a higher plan. An inspired labor chisels with heavenly cruelty an unwilling mold. Implacable in the passion of their will, lifting the hammers of titanic toil, the demiurges are urges of the higher power. The demiurges of the universe work. They shape with giant strokes their own. Their sons are marked with their enormous stamp of fire. Although the shaping God's tremendous touch is torture unbearable to mortal nerves, the fiery spirit grows in strength within and feels a joy in every titan pang. So, Mother has written that for the psychic being, that is our deeper part, what the outer vital is crying over, if the psychic being recognizes that here's a chance for growth, it actually celebrates inside. It feels happy that never mind if I'm suffering. So I have a friend who's a healer, and she shared something very interesting. She did a healing for somebody who was in a very, very pathetic condition. And this healer somehow can communicate with the soul of the person. And she said that the soul of the person was saying that never mind, if this is going to help me to grow, I'm good, I'm going through it. So that's how it is. So although the shaping God's tremendous touch is torture unbearable to mortal nerves, the fiery spirit grows in strength within and feels a joy in every titan pang. O Ashwapati, random seem the ways along whose banks your footsteps stray or run. In casual hours or moments of the gods, yet your least stumblings are foreseen above. What a tremendous reassurance that every mishap, every stumbling in your life is known to the higher power. There's another beautiful line in Savitri, calm eyes divine regard the human race. It's like calm eyes divine are constantly watching and keeping a control. Yet your least stumblings are foreseen above. Infallibly the curves of life are drawn, following the stream of time through the unknown. They are led by a clue the calm immortals keep. Now, the voice replied, this is the voice of the divine speaking to Savitri. Page 476, the voice replied, remember why thou camest, find out thy soul, recover thy hid self, in silence seek God's meaning in thy depths. So there's another line in Savitri, wherever there is suffering, there ignorance too must come. So what is the way out of this ignorance? This is the agenda of yoga. Remember why you came. Wherever there is ignorance, what did I say? Oh, sorry. Wherever there is ignorance, there suffering too much shall come. So the voice replied, remember why thou camest, find out thy soul, recover thy hid self. In silence seek God's meaning in thy depths. Then mortal nature change to the divine. Open God's door, enter into his trance. Cast thought from thee, that nimble ape of light. In his tremendous hush stilling thy brain, his vast truth wake within and know and see. So that's what he's saying. When you're suffering, remind yourself, why did you come? Find your soul, recover your hid self. In silence, seek God's meaning in thy depths. In every experience, there's a meaning in each curve and line, right? So seek God's meaning in this experience. Why has it come? What do you have to learn from it? Then mortal nature change to the divine. Open God's door, enter into his trance. Cast thought from thee, that nimble ape of light. Cast away thought from you, that nimble, that very skilled ape of light. Thought appears to be light, but it's not really light. In his tremendous hush stilling thy brain, his vast truth wake within and know and see. Cast from thee sense that veils thy spirit's sight. In the enormous emptiness of thy mind, thou shalt see the Eternal's body in the world. Know him in every voice heard by thy soul. In the world's contacts meet his single touch. All things shall fold thee into his embrace. Conquer thy heart's throbs. Let thy heart beat in God. Right now my heart is beating in all the things I'm attached to. But when I conquer the heart's throb, my heart will beat in God. Thy nature shall be the engine of his works. Thy voice shall house the mightiness of his word. Then shalt thou harbour my force and conquer death. O mortal, bear this great world's law of pain. In thy hard passage through a suffering world, lean for thy soul's support on heaven's strength. So beautiful. Bear this great world's law of pain. You know, we live life as if pain shouldn't happen, isn't it? I mean, we know pain is a fact, but every time pain comes, we get thrown, "Arey, how did this happen to me?" But that's what Buddha's first truth, noble truth is suffering. Dukkha is a way of life. Understand that there'll be pain. And don't get thrown off by it and don't regard it as something bad. because we do that every time. So, O mortal, bear this great world's law of pain. In thy hard passage through a suffering world, lean for thy soul's support on heaven's strength. Heaven's strength is, what does he mean, heaven's strength? The divine is also you, na? A portion of the divine is inside you. Turn to your depths for your strength. Not always looking for some figure in the heaven to come and help you.
Like
You
a
have it.
being. Heaven is like in sync with itself, in being.
Yes.
Being instead of doing, in action.
In action, even in action, you can lean on the depths within you to act from there also. So, in thy hard passage through a suffering world, lean for thy soul's support on heaven's strength. Turn towards high truth, aspire to love and peace. A little bliss is lent thee from above, a touch divine upon thy human days. Make of thy daily way a pilgrimage, for through small joys and griefs thou movest towards God. How do we make our daily way a pilgrimage? By converting every experience of life to take me closer to God. Whether it's pain, through small joys and griefs. Whether it's joy, I receive the joy with gratitude, remembering the divine, not an ego kick and feeling flattered. If it's pain, I receive that. Mother says it, no, that if you take everything that happens to you as God's grace, you will see that it is indeed grace. You've given this, I don't know the meaning in it, but there must be some meaning in it. Let me go through it with as much grace as I can. Yeah? And any action done without the ego is a graceful action. Any action done with ego is an action which lacks grace in both ways, punning on the word grace. It's not graceful and it's not filled with grace either. So, let more and more my actions be graceful, without egoism, more impersonality, more surrender, more self-giving. Then I make of my daily way a pilgrimage, for through small joys and griefs thou movest towards God. Okay, so this is our last screen share. Any questions, anything to share? No? Okay, then let's just sit quietly and let's assimilate. Although periods of pain are almost a certainty in each of our lives, somehow we live life as if we were not meant to get pain. Every time pain comes, we go into a revolt. And pain makes us doubt what we hear again and again in satsangs, that life is good, that there's a higher purpose, that everything happens for a purpose. But when we are suffering, very often our inner dialogue is, this is unnecessary. There's no purpose in this. Why is this happening? And our whole relationship with pain is a relationship of fight or flight. We want to either fight the pain or we want to run away from it. We want to distract ourselves from it or not go into situations where we may face the pain or conflict. But Scott Peck says that in trying to avoid our problems, instead of confronting them, we create more pain for ourselves. Father of Western psychology, Carl Jung, implies that all neurotic behavior is a bid to avoid legitimate suffering. Legitimate because it needs to be there. We don't indulge pain when it comes, but when it comes, we don't have to flinch as much as we do. We don't have to avoid it as much as we do. Instead, if we bring consciousness to the pain, if we partner our pain instead of trying to avoid it, the pain reveals the hidden gift it carries. And we can learn to partner the smallest of pains. A thought comes, A said this rude thing to me and it pains me. I try to avoid the pain by either not thinking it or overthinking it and imputing all kinds of motives to why A said this. But instead of going into why A said this, a better inner dialogue would be, why am I hurting so much because of what A said? For example, is it because in childhood a parent spoke to me like that and it hits a raw nerve? But everyone is not my parent. A could have said it in a very different sense from the way my parents said it. So if we sit with the pain, if we really look at it, if we plumb its depths to reveal its secret, the secret of every pain is light. Rumi has very correctly said, the wound is where the light enters. But we have to open the wound skillfully with our consciousness so that light enters. Sri Aurobindo's beautiful words, pain is the hand of nature sculpting men to greatness. An inspired labor chisels with heavenly cruelty an unwilling mold. And then again he says in Savitri, make of thy daily way a pilgrimage, for through small joys and griefs thou movest towards God. So if joy comes, I accept it in gratitude instead of feeling arrogant. If grief comes, I partner the grief instead of fighting it. What hidden gift has this grief brought me? What veiled light is waiting to enter this wound if I allow it to? So, let's practice through the week partnering pain, and if you have anything significant, do share, because we all learn from the sharings. Hands together in a namaste. Take a long, slow inhalation. Breathe out with Om.